Hello, welcome to yet another Connections webinar, a live streaming webinar hosted by myself, Angela, but with our panelists, that's Dr. Ray and Jean Contagion, who will be on shortly. And I will tell you, part of tonight's talk will be concerning the holidays. So we've already went through Thanksgiving, but there's other holidays coming up. This year, and the way things have been, might be impacting your holiday gatherings, but try your best to think about, even in the past, how stressful holidays, gatherings with family and friends might have been for you. So we're just launching one poll, and it's just basically rating how stressful holidays tend to be for you. You can answer based on this year and what you might expect, but also you can answer based on any other year, because some people have a lot of stress and tend to regress when they're seeing their relatives, let's say college kids going back home, or traveling back home because you live away. So whatever it is, feel free to use the Q&A feature, or also you can chat me directly in the chat box. Hello, Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hello, Angela. How are you?
Doing wonderfully, thank you. How about yourself?
You're doing fantastic. Fantastic. It's a wonderful evening for a webinar, huh?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to adjust this light a little bit. It's a little angle.
So we just had a few wonderful classes this week on numerology and on the chakra system that just started. So that's exciting. That has been really fun to teach. You made it worse, I think.
No, sorry.
We're more shadowy. So very cool. So today what we want to talk about is, how do we prepare to get this light right in my face to gather and go through these holidays this year. We all just finished Thanksgiving, and we heard quite a bit from people about the stressors of college students returning home.
People are going through a lot of stressors this season. It's a very different season, very different holiday season than anyone has ever experienced before. So, and we're hearing it from a lot of our clients, right? They're adjusting to these new family structures, dealing with Zoom and having
and
parties.
Everyone has a different feeling about how to gather or not gather, just because of Corona as well, on top of all the normal holiday stuff. So it's a very different year.
There's a lot of anxiety and a lot more depression that we're hearing from people. And we just kind of wanted to take a moment and just really address that, just because we're all kind of under the same stressor, but we're all dealing with it in different ways. One of the things that, we experienced today, which is very interesting, is that, our son and his girlfriend are home from college, and they are doing classes virtually. And so they were both in separate classes in two different parts of the house. And at the same time, we were in two different parts of the house working virtually. So, 4 family members within the household working virtually. And Angela's our daughter-in-law, and she's across the country working virtually. So it is a really very, very different time. And, that does put a lot of different types of pressures on the family structure.
I noticed too, like our son went out, and then when he came in very quietly. Like he didn't know if somebody was going to be on a Zoom call or in session or something. Like he's like, really aware of, not making noise and not bothering people who are working. And, I think what's really interesting is that, we're just still people living on a planet that none of us are going to survive. And we've always had germs, right? And so that part has not changed. We've always had communicable diseases, and we've all had to deal with, what do we call that? That fancy term you came up with, that something fatigue, rapid
stimuli adjustment fatigue.
Stimuli adjustment fatigue. So, I mean, that happens to a human being because we like certainty. And anytime we shift from certainty to uncertainty, it's a stressor for us. And we have to be more alert, be more on our toes, and adjust more. And so,
especially if that's uncertainty has been going on for 8 months.
Right. Yeah. And so, in the same way that we've always dealt with it, you can do things like, instead of trying to do the same thing you've always done, do something else. And you had that idea of, playing a game a little bit differently when we do the staff party, so that we're not so focused on what isn't, and we're not so focused on what we have or don't have, but we're creating a new experience. And through that, and through all adversity, you could have the best times. Actually, you might even be grateful you don't have to gather with some of your family.
I think one of the biggest stressors that, we're kind of encountering over these 8 months is fear, right? And we're talking about uncertainty. There's fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen, fear of, what isn't going to happen. And, the problem with fear is that just like anxiety, we've talked about anxiety in the past, or, sadness, there's no dimmer switch, right? So once our fear response is turned on, it will continue to search and look for anything else to be afraid of, right? And so, now with this mass stressor that we're all dealing with, that fear is amplified, right? And so we see parents, bringing their kids along and making sure they put their masks on, and don't hug your grandma, and you have to stay away. And so there's this constant message of fear that is being, justly is justified. There are things to be afraid of out there, but it is constantly being reinforced, right? And so now, it's like, don't gather for Thanksgiving, don't gather for holiday, celebrations, make it much more stay at home. I think that's the common message and everything. And so it continues to perpetuate that same message of fear.
You know what else begins with F?
What?
Fun.
Oh, yeah.
I remember one year, for whatever reason, we just really did not have any money. I think we had a lot more expenses than we thought. And I don't remember what year it was. And so we decided not to do any Christmas presents. And so what we did instead is each person in the family chose the name of someone else. And we bought everybody some sweatpants, and we all dressed in sweatpants, and we cooked dinner at home. And I think we played some games, but for a present, you had to make your present for the person you got. And some people wrote poems, some people, what else?
Painted.
Painting.
And yeah.
Do you remember any other ones, Ange?
I think there was
Made a photo collage.
A photo collage.
There were a couple of those, and some people, you mentioned poem, but some people took an existing Christmas story and then changed it around, like the night before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So they made it personalized.
So it was really a memorable and enjoyable Christmas because we did it different, and we didn't just sit around and go, oh, this is going to be the same thing minus presents, And so that idea of, I think that's why people came up with wearing, ugly Christmas sweaters, right? Is just to try to break the mood and have some fun. But you got to do that with inside yourself first, because there's this thing called emotional contagion, which is like whatever you're feeling, you bring that with you. And if other people aren't in a really strong way, they're going to feel it too. And so you could either show up as the ball of sunshine, or you could show up as the doom and gloom. And that's
going to infect everyone, mm-hmm. too. Talk about infection. you can walk in a room and when two people have been fighting, because that's that energy just kind of hangs in the room. And so if you are that contagion of fear, you are going to spread that amongst everyone that you are in your home with, right? And it's very hard to get out of it once that ball starts rolling. We had talked about that fear response, it's on or off, right? And this is not just a psychological thing, because what happens is that we start our bodies, our physiological response happening when we start thinking in this way, and our hormones start, pumping, and our body starts being affected by our thoughts, our emotions, and that physiological response.
So once you have that biofeedback system going inside of you and that response, it's difficult to break it. And you have to actually get really conscious in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true, not just because of COVID, but because of being alive. Being alive and dealing with other people and dealing with uncertainty and dealing with things that we may not have control over, including we just had a full moon, and I swear every day, every session I did yesterday, people were really edgy,
Yeah.
really resistive, and and then there's other days that are just awesome. And, there's just a lot of learning and growing happening, and it feels good to be around people. And some of that stuff is so many different parts of who we are. But what we want to look at is, what do we have control over? What do we have control over in terms of how we think, talk, feel about our relatives, think, talk, and feel about the world we live in, and ourselves as human beings?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we can control. And there's a lot to be said for that, because the first thing it's going to do, can you believe I'm so distracted by how incredibly pretty I look on this camera right now?
I was distracted by the same thing.
And just saying something like that instantly changes everyone who heard it and me saying it, right? And it is something you can do about everything. I remember when I used to work at this office, and I would walk past people's offices, and I would take a knee and do this and go, superstar, like they would do on Saturday Night Live, and just walk away. It was just something really silly. Like they're sitting there working, all of a sudden I'm like, superstar, and leave. And we can just be these little bubbles of energy that is going to emotionally contagion them, make them happier. They're going to ripple out that effect. And so the hardest part is you got to do it inside yourself first, but you win either way if you can get there, if you can do it. And so, I remember during this thing we had called quarantine, where Ray and I dressed up every day for 76 days.
It seems like such a long time
It does.
ago.
But it's just a weird thing to, sit and put weird makeup on your face or a costume or whatever. So if you just think about your physical appearance and how that can just set the mood or set the tone of something, and get creative and have fun with that.
I think that's so important, kind of what you said about
being incredibly pretty.
Yes, that. And also the fact of boiling things down to what you have power and control over, mm-hmm. right? Because, when that fear response turns on, as I said, it continues to search in our environment for more things to be afraid about, right? And so it can expand to the entire world. And I had a client who, was watching CNN 24/7 and in multiple rooms. So if he went from one room to the other, in the other room, he had CNN playing. And so he found himself becoming really, really angry, right? Really angry. And that emotional contagion was infecting the entire family. Everyone was feeling that anger that he had, and I just said to him, is that your intention? Is your intention to make yourself feel angry? It's like, no, that's not my intention. is your intention to get the news or get information? Yes. So are there other places that you can just get the news and then turn off the TV that is making you angry? And so he just did that for a week. For 1 week, he decided he was going to just turn off, the TV, and he was going to get his news in a bulletin fashion, from some internet news, whatever. And he found himself to be less angry. Imagine that. It's so weird, right? But, if we expose ourselves to the things that are intensifying the uncomfortable emotions that we have, we're just going to intensify it, and we're going to feel that more. And then we're going to spread that to everyone else in our household, right? And spread it to people through Zoom too. So it's not just contained within the walls. Ange, you got a question?
Yes, I just want to mention, so the chat is also a great feature for people to send us their thoughts. You don't have to send a question, but if you want to participate in the conversation, please do. So someone participating has said along the same lines, Dr. Ray, that when news became overwhelming for them, and they made a conscious choice to sort of stop watching the news and stop reading about it on all these different sites and social media, they instead are choosing to consume just other pieces of knowledge, right? So that's in other magazines, learning about a topic that you're interested in and just reading more about it. And that I can relate to. Thank you so much for the comment. Because maybe if I did watch the news all the time, I could take an hour off for the week and read a new book, read something else. So then I have more conversations, something different to talk to my husband about, or to my relatives or my friends about.
When we live a natural life, that happens organically, because just the other day we were sitting outside. It was a little bit warm enough, with some blankets to sit outside. And we got 2 woodpeckers at our bird feeder. I mean, that never happens in your living room, right? There's never something that sort of comes in, and I was like, what is that?
It shouldn't.
Surprise. We were sitting by the fire, and some people we were with saw some shooting stars. We didn't get to see them. But nature does that to us, right? It's not stagnant. Like, you can't sit there and just, even if it's raining, it usually doesn't rain consistently. It'll rain, it might thunder, it might lightning, it'll do something that changes things up. And I think there's a part of us that just needs that to sort of jolt us out of whatever funk we sort of get in. And that's the thing about nature that's so lovely, is it moves it at this pace that we can tolerate. Like, TV moves way faster than nature does. That information coming at us, we got to process it. But you go outside, you sit there, nothing happens, and then, oh, here comes a sandhill crane. I hear it. Can I find it? And that kind of stuff. We work so hard to become, what do they call that? Mindfulness. Be present now. And a lot of times you can't help but be present when you're out in nature, because you have to watch where you're walking. You have to listen to what's going on around you. And so a lot of this artificial stuff, even if it's pleasant things on the TV, it still is a frequency that's difficult for us. So it tires us out. And being aware of what we're feeling is really important, because awareness, if you're not aware, you can't change it. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way. Just some days they're just tough. You wake up in a certain mood, or I don't know, you just can't shake something. And those are important days to remember. Reading this in a magazine, like, how do you do depression well? And it was like, have some lovely something in your bath, like whether they make bath bombs or something, or Epsom salts, and listen to some music and light some candles and have some comfy, sweats to put on afterwards. And maybe have some chocolate or a little wine or something. It's like, if it's going to suck, why don't you just do it really well? And that's true. That's like the attitude you can come at anything with, anything.
When I heard that title, I was thinking like dress in all black, wear goth, makeup, and
But even that,
doing it well, right?
Like, yeah, and then go bang a gong. You know what I mean? Like, because that actually is going to help you process your emotions. So,
the natural balance in nature is flow, right? Stagnation is actually unhealthy. So, when you go out in nature, like Jean and I, we do a lot of hiking. And, when we come across a water source, you have to select the healthiest water source. And if it's a stagnant pond of water versus a running brook, we're going to get our water from the running brook, because water that is flowing is actually healthier. It auto filters itself. Okay. And so when we think about our own body as part of nature, flow is healthier than stagnation, right? We don't want our blood to stagnate. We don't want our intestines to stagnate. That's not a good thing, and we want this flow in our body. We also want flow in our relationships. And so for all of us that are kind of feeling cooped up and stuck and limited and restricted, that is stagnation. And that's why it feels bad, right? And that's why it can actually come out sideways. The stress, the anger, the frustration that we feel, it's going to come out in this tension, that edginess that Jean's talking about. And we're going to unleash that on who? The closest people to us, right? The people in the immediate household, our family members, on Zoom, we're going to hang up on them. Whatever, we can do to kind of express that internal stagnation, that is what we can expect to be happening. And so, we need to really focus on what we have power and control over. We need to lower our expectations that we have, right? Don't get on your kids about the chores so much. It's just, they are trying to deal with doing school virtually. There are a lot of different challenges that we're all facing that we never had to face 8 months ago, or at least it wasn't forced upon us. And so we have to look at it from a very different perspective now.
if you just focus for a second on the next breath that you take, and notice how much air you're actually breathing into your lungs. Is it shallow? Is it long? Is it a deep breath? And then, once you become aware of that, get really conscious and breathe in the deepest breath that you can breathe in. Just notice what that feels like. That's how quickly we can change something. But when we're not paying attention, it goes somewhere, and it goes to whatever it's trying to adjust to around it. And so, the one thing that is so true is human beings can really tolerate a bunch. You see people who've lived through really horrible wars and all sorts of stuff, and there's just this resilience and this thrivingness. And then there's other people who anything happens and it just kicks them down, and they stay down, and that's what free will is about. That's what choice is about. And even if it's 100% not your fault, you still have the responsibility of, well, how are you going to respond to whatever's happened, right? And so there's always something you can do. And it's really obnoxious and annoying to be around someone who actually is able to do that. And they make whole like TV shows on this. Like, I didn't really watch Lost, but I'm sure there was one person in that was like so optimistic and so like, hey, this is going to be great. And everyone's like, shut up. Because, it takes some effort to get out of that. But, we always have that ability to find a place of humor and shift our perception, because ultimately that's all we have in the end, is whatever we think and whatever we feel. And a lot of times we take that for granted, and we let them shift as the world shifts or as events happen in our lives that we have no control over. But I think that's what we came here to master, is how do we choose? How do we choose to be happy? How do we choose to say what is or isn't okay, you know?
And yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ange.
Oh, no, I was just going to add, I think it's good to give you a couple comments that some people listening tonight are saying. One is they have noticed already with Thanksgiving that going into more holidays at the end of this year, they want to set good boundaries with Zoom calls and social media. And then someone else said the signal to noise ratio. Reduce the noise so you can hear your inner signals. And I agree with both of those. If you can reduce your use a little bit on social media, if you're like many of the people last time who had said in a poll that social media made them feel like it was a waste of time, like it took some of their energy away, right? If it's doing that for you and you can reduce some of your time going into these holidays, that is great. And just digitally detoxing is also what someone else said, and I would say very well put. And that's something that you two have said before.
I think that's fantastic. All of those comments are right on the money, right? It makes me think about, all of those shows, those acclaimed shows that people are like, you gotta see this, you gotta, and for a while there, it was, there's always like this pressure socially for people to, be on the same page when it comes to these popular shows. When you trust yourself, right? When you trust your gut and what feels right for you, then you won't succumb to this pressure, this peer pressure of what you should be exposing yourself to, right? And so if you've got to turn the TV off because it's too much for you, then you've got to trust that. If you need to, limit your exposure to negative people, you've got to trust that, and you don't want to just force yourself to do something because everybody else is doing it.
These are things that once we resonate to those things, we don't really realize that we're there, and this is the most, our most precious commodity is attention. And whatever we choose to give attention to, it's usually not someone who has love and goodwill for us. It's usually someone that is trying to grab our attention because it wants something from us. And you don't realize it, but it slowly starts to drain you. And I know I don't know if you've heard us talk about a walkabout where you go somewhere for 48 to 72 hours and somewhere you've never been, and you completely unplug and no one knows where you are, and you just do whatever feels like what you want to do in that moment. And this one person we were working with, he wasn't able to do that. He couldn't go anywhere. So that's what he did. He turned off his electronics for the weekend. And he was so amazed at how much time he had. It was like, all of a sudden there's all this time, and what you do with that. And, that's the thing. And if you've listened to our podcast, you've heard us say this a million times. There is the precursor of becoming in life is creativity. And the thing right before creativity is boredom. And when we have all this distraction, we don't get bored and we don't grow. And so our life becomes very lackluster. And so when you talk about emotional contagion, when you're watching TV or when you're going on social media, you are borrowing energy from that is taking and hijacking your emotions and lifting you up and dropping you down, lifting you up and dropping you down.
Your life is being spoon-fed to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a little less comfortable to shut it all off. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're at home and all of a sudden all the electricity goes off. It's a little shocking. And you hear just all the sound. Someone was talking about sound, right? You just go, ooh, and then you're in silence and you're in the dark. And it's a little exciting. It's a little fun. And then maybe the lights pop back on and it's all over and you go back to doing whatever you're doing. But you have a choice. The TV doesn't jump into your life. You have to let it into your life. You have to let social media into your life. And the first thing you have to do if you want to have control over it is to really become aware of how does it make you feel, and how much of your attention is it getting? And are there other things that if you started doing that, you might feel better? You know, one thing I would encourage everyone to do tonight, I myself have not been outside since it got dark. I think I went outside to let the dog out for like a minute today. I haven't been outside, which is terrible. I don't feel good if I'm not outside for a good chunk of time during the day. But go outside and just look at the moon and the stars if it's not cloudy. And just try to sense what type of energy or vibration you can get from that. I mean, we tend to do that with the sun because the sun is pretty obnoxious and big, and it changes the temperature and everything. So when we go out in the sun, we go, oh, that feels good. But we forget we can do that with starlight because guess what the sun is? It's just a star also. It's just farther away, but it does energize us and brings it in, and it makes you present and aware. And it feels different being outside than being in the house. Even if you spend like just a couple minutes, you know, even if it's cold out, you don't have to be out there very long, but just, this is a concept that I used to call brain expansion, right? So brain expansion means that your brain is only as big as the room that it's in. And I think things like social media and TV make us feel like we've made that room bigger, but we didn't. Nope, the walls are still there. Have more exposure and more activity and more noise in the room that we're in, but that's not brain expansion. And as you open the door, you can just feel your brain go, and it gets really big. It gets all the way to the farthest star away you can see. And it's a great feeling. And that does something to our energy field and our emotions that get everything flowing again.
It's a little chilly out tonight.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, bundle up.
And, you know, this is an interesting one. So someone else commented about what you were talking about with like this idea of brain expansion is when the space station is viewable, right? And I certainly in DC have went outside when I knew it was going to be viewable for me. And someone has said that they feel good, right? They feel like this expansion, this fact that they can look so far away and see something that they know there are humans there, but they're in space. They're so far away. It's like this idea of proof that we can just, there's so much room between us. And thank you for the comment. It is really, it just gives them a good sense. That's what they're trying to get out.
Such a
I think it's hard to
expression.
Yeah, right.
Concept. We were watching something and along the same lines, and I believe it was the Voyager was out there, and they said, can you turn around and take a picture of the Earth? And at this point, it looked like, I don't know if you've noticed, but Mars is up in the sky these days, and it looks like a bright red star. But the Earth looked like that from where Voyager was. It was like, there's that little dot in this really dark universe. And like, oh, wow. That was a cool perspective.
That was Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
Who actually had that happen. And that perspective really sparked off a whole thought of what we're doing to our planet, right? And that this little dot in the universe is what we are on, and we all share it together. Right? And there is no other place for human beings to go. So, when you look at things from that perspective, it really puts a spotlight on every single moment, right? And making every single moment count with purpose and meaning, right? And so when we're sitting here and we're talking about this and we're thinking from this perspective, we are resonating with that. And with that resonance, we are affecting our environment. We're affecting everyone within our home. And then it affects our night, and it affects our sleep, and it affects our next day. And we start resonating with that over a course of a week, and then maybe over a course of a month. And then to the point that the majority of our resonance has that perspective, that thought, that belief in mind. You can only imagine what your life is going to create.
If you think about what is the longest period of time that you can go in the home you live in and not have any discord with anyone else in that home. And then you think about that between neighbors and between countries, and how sad it is that we have still that nature in us that wants to be at war, that wants to fight, that wants to grab onto things and not let go, and not choose peace and not choose love. And it just happens. If you don't believe me, get on an airplane. You get on an airplane and you are going to certainly be irritated by somebody on that airplane. That for sure is going to happen. And that's in our nature. And it's really hard, you know, in this concept of, could we possibly have peace on earth? Could we possibly share our natural resources and care for the earth and care for ourselves and each other, and turn down the warring and the arguing and the, you know, there's such an overculture right now in our politics of that, and it shows up and you feel it. You feel it in your family, you feel it in your home, you feel it in your heart, you know? And geez, what a concept. We had this website, like, you know, how you can like get a domain name and just pay for it. It was never a website. And it was called the 214 experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this thought, so 214 is February 14th, which is our anniversary. If everyone in the entire world at exactly 214 on the day, it, like that moment in time, the whole earth, whatever time it was in their time zones, everyone went outside and just said out loud, I love you. Like, what would that vibration be like if every 7 billion people on this planet said that at exactly the same time, push, out into the universe? And, you know, we never made it happen, but that was always a dream of mine. Like, how cool would that be that we would all vibrate love at exactly the same moment? So
Haven't made it happen yet.
Haven't made it happen yet. That would be a fabulous thing though. And you know, maybe that's going to be one of the benefits of Corona, is that it's uniting us, you know. So, you know, there's people who are doing this with the rosary, you know, and they're praying the rosary at a certain time universally all around the world. And so those things are becoming more and more possible because we're aware that this thing has affected all of us. There's no one on this planet not affected by this. And it's a very uniting thing from a not so good thing. And so maybe there's going to be some wonderful benefits from that. So, you know, if we can all pull through it, then what else could we accomplish? It could be amazing.
Well, if we just focus on what we have power and control of and role model that for our kids, then we're all doing our part.
So I think what would be appropriate is, let's do the loving kindness meditation. And for those of you who don't know loving kindness meditation, it's a Buddhist meditation that is fairly common. And so it's a wonderful one to learn. So get into a comfortable position with your spine straight and just gently close your eyes. And within yourself, just try to find your own inner peace. If there's anything that you can kind of resolve or let go of, or at least put it in a box and put it on the shelf for now. And just feel a sense of gratitude for the life that you have. And I want you to imagine a person that you really love. And imagine that person standing in front of you. And look into that person's eyes and say to them, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May your life be at ease. Just be aware of what that feels like to say that to that person and the impact that it has on them. And I want you to imagine someone you may know casually someone who checked you out of, at the Jewel or something, not checked you out, but like that helped you out in some way, served you coffee, someone that you barely know but had some interaction with. And imagine looking into their eyes and saying, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May your life be at ease. And imagine what that feeling is like both for you and the impact it had on the other person. And now I want you to imagine someone who really irritates you, someone who you have a difficult time being around, who doesn't think like you or doesn't believe like you, someone really irritating. And look into their eyes and say, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May your life be at ease. And be aware of what that feels like for you and the impact that it had on them. And now I want you to imagine that you're looking in the mirror. Look right into your eyes, the windows of your soul, and say to yourself, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May your life be at ease. And be aware of what that felt like for you to say those words. And be aware of what it felt like to receive those words. And bring your awareness back to your breath. And gather up as much love inside of yourself as you can. And imagine spreading that love out through your home, through your neighborhood, through your community, through your state, through the country, through the entire earth, and out into the space station, and out into the universe. And imagine your thoughts being carried all the way out to the edge of the universe as you intend the thought, may all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be peaceful. And may all lives be at ease. And be aware of what it feels like to think that. And what it would feel like if that happened all at one time. That all beings were happy and healthy and peaceful. And that life truly was at ease. And say a short prayer of gratitude for your healing. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. You know, in the class I was teaching earlier, I made a reference to, I never wake up in the morning just craving to eat broccoli. And it seems like everything that's good for us, we really have to make an effort to do. And everything that's not so good for us, we really want to do. We want to go eat the ice cream or the pizza, And I think the same thing is true with our words and putting love out there. It's much more vulnerable than putting anger out there or righteousness. It's harder to be kind. So I guess I would say, I hope you have a hard life.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. May you all be happy and healthy.
And peaceful. And may your life be at ease. Have a great week.
See you next week.